Welcome back to Dukascopy TV. I'm Darren McDermott. I have Michel Girardin in the studio from the University of Geneva to have a look at Barack Obama's nomination for the new Fed chairman. Welcome today.
Hi, Dorian.
So a few weeks ago, Barack Obama nominated Janet Yellen to be the next Fed chairman. Now, a new article by Forbes said a Yellen Fed has the makings of a potential disaster. It also said that Yellen was more radical than Keynes. Now, would you agree or disagree?
I think the title of the piece you just quoted is a bit too radical, but depends what we mean by a disaster. She has been studying at length how to tackle the problem of unemployment, how monetary policy can address unemployment, which in itself is rather odd. Not so much, I mean, okay, we have to know that the Federal Reserve is the only central bank in the world, with the possible exception of the Swiss National Bank, to have a dual mandate, i.e. the traditional one of targeting inflation, but the less traditional one of also ensuring full employment. So within this dual mandate, most central bankers who have been at the helm of the Federal Reserve have put an emphasis on the first one, on the targeting inflation. Unemployment fighting against unemployment has been the sort of number two issue. But for Janet Yellen, this is clearly more of a priority. Now, is this recipe for disaster? I don't know. Clearly now, the important issue is unemployment, it's not inflation. So to bring somebody like Janet Yellen, who is more of a Keynesian than a monetarist, and who is a believer in the so-called Phillips curve, which I tend to be as well, i.e. that there's some kind of trade-off between wages and inflation on one hand and unemployment on the other hand, and that you can buy some reduction in the unemployment rate by conducting a more expansionary monetary policy, even if that leads to a bit more inflation. So clearly to bring somebody like this, like Janet Yellen at the helm of the central bank, is more a sign of continuity. What Alan Greenspan started, Ben Bernanke can continue, and Janet Yellen will bring forward, i.e. to focus more on the real economy than on potential inflation fears.
And looking at the Fed's decision not to taper, now Michel, were you surprised by this? And when do you actually expect them to taper? Do you think maybe March is a possible date?
Possibly never, actually. Now, I believe there will be QE4, QE5, QE infinity maybe. Now, there's one thing which I think is quite funny, but maybe also illustrative. If you look at what tapering actually means, it means it's a reduction. You go in Google image and you put the word tapering, and you'll see, before even the pictures of Ben Bernanke pops up, you will see pictures of marathon, people who do the marathon and they rest. And the idea of tapering is precisely that, is before you actually do the marathon, which is 42 kilometers, you take some rest. You don't run the day before the competition or even 2 or 3 days before it. You just rest. But that's before a major competition. So you may wonder whether the word tapering actually means reducing, you know, all these bonds that the Federal Reserve has been buying over now since for 1 year now. They are just reducing, they're just lifting the foot from the pedal, but they're not putting it on the brake. And maybe, if need be, and we'll see that with Janet Yellen, if at some point we have a problem with unemployment and the economy does not stay on the recovery track on which it is now, then probably, maybe they will put the foot back on the pedal, and during the competition we will have even more of these injections of liquidity.
Now, if Janet Yellen becomes the next Fed chairman, she will be the very first woman in this position. Now, powerful women, women in finance, the idea is becoming more popular. We have Christine Lagarde for the IMF, and we also have a great competition here, Miss Dukascopy 2013, which you know all about, and we actually will be announcing the winner at tomorrow's Geneva Forex event. Now, this idea, so many people, some people have actually said if Lehman's brother was actually a sister, the disaster would never have happened. Now, what are your views on women in finance?
It's a very positive view I have. I believe, like what you said, it was the director of the World Bank who said that if Lehman Brothers had been Lehman sisters, the world would not be in such a shamble. And I think there's some truth to that. There's some study that show that if there's a correlation and a causal link between, which is more important than correlation, between the tenure of testosterone and the ability of taking risk. So the more testosterone you have, and the greater your inclination towards taking risk and possibly excessive risks. So having somebody like Janet Yellen at the Federal Reserve or Christine Lagarde at the IMF is good, because in today's world, where you have to take decision, and each decision you take or non-decision you take bears some fruits in terms of reward, but also carries immense, possibly immense sources of risks. You need somebody that is able to temper one against the other, and Janet Yellen does that very well. For instance, she's been applauded by everyone, you know, all her peers in the profession are really saying she's a very professional. She has done some very accurate predictions. For instance, in 2007, just weeks before the bubble burst, she identified the bubble, and she said we may have a problem here, and if that bubble bursts, we will have a credit crunch that will trigger a massive recession, and that happened. Now, 2 years before that, actually, she made a speech in 2005 whereby she said, should a central bank act preemptively to avoid a bubble formation? And she said, well, she weights the pros and the cons, and she says the cons of acting preventively against trying to deflate a bubble are actually bigger than the pros for doing so. So she's always, you know, she knows a lot of economic theory, had done extensive research. Her husband is a Nobel Prize in economics, so that may help as well. And she has this attitude of somebody who is very knowledgeable and will take the best decisions on a risk-reward basis.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci à toi, Dorian.
And thank you for watching Dukascopy TV. Well, do keep an eye out to see who will be crowned Miss Dukascopy 2013. See you soon.